doesn't challenge you, it is not going to change you. And sometimes we need to proactively put challenge in our lives.
Hi, this is Jason Romero, and thank you for attending this success webinar. It's based on the second book that I wrote, which is called The Success Cycle. I got a copy of it on the screen. And today I'm going to take you through what I believe we should all be taught, which is how success takes place. For some reason, this is not taught in schools. Hasn't been taught to me even in mentorships. I experienced the process, but I feel like I discovered it when I wrote this book and committed it to paper. And I want to share this with as many people as I can. Definitely not a New York Times bestseller, but I think the knowledge within this is absolutely brilliant. So who am I and how do I have authority to write this thing? Well, I'm just a guy, Jason Romero. I've done some different things in my life, quite a variety. Let's see, went to law school, was a lawyer for a while, switched careers, became a business guy, worked 10 years with GE, ended up on an expat assignment in the Caribbean, ran GE Capital in the Caribbean. It's kind of my ring the bell assignment there. Came back, worked for a Fortune 100 company back home, Denver. Western Union, ran global core operations there. Was the CEO of a nonprofit, helps kids with autism. One of my children has autism. I founded a nonprofit. I've written a couple books, ran across the United States at 51 miles a day. It's top 10 fastest crossing. Was a Paralympian. Have more than 10 world records. By the way, I'm legally blind. I was diagnosed with this eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I'm 52 now. I was diagnosed when I was 14, and I was told by the time I was 30, I would be blind. So done a lot in life. I guess other pieces too. Most important is I'm a father of 3 children. Was married, have been divorced. I've had relationships, some really great ones, had some failed relationships. So I'm kind of a guy who's lived life, varied life, and done a myriad of different things. But as I look back at those different things, I realized that there's a journey for how we succeed in certain things and how we fail, and how failure is a part of success. And I thought it was really important to share this with the world. And really what ended up inspiring this, I mentioned that I have this eye condition, I'm legally blind. My eyesight had deteriorated to a certain point, and I had encountered a severe depression. This was probably about 8 years ago when I was 44. And I found myself unemployed, divorced, depressed. And that's when I had a calling to run across America. After I did that, and there's a whole story behind that. I'm a keynote. I ended up becoming a keynote speaker as a result of that. And but as a result of that run across the U.S., I did end up becoming a keynote speaker and deliver keynotes to conventions, conferences, large organizations, galas, that type of thing. And as I spoke and gave these talks, these motivational talks, I would have audience members come up to me and ask me, "How did you not quit? Like with all these different types of adversities that you encounter in life, or with the difficulty of running across the U.S., 50 miles a day back to back, and there's all these things. You get lost, your family issues, get hit by a truck, just crazy stuff." And my answer always was just don't quit. But I realized that was not satisfying to my audience, and they wanted more. And I have this strategy that I mentioned before. I call it like a AAA strategy because it's an easy acronym for me to remember. 3 A's. When there's an adversity, you adapt in order to achieve. And that's what I used to be able to get through school with this eye disease, to try to be, quote, normal or conventional, which now I throw out the window. I just love to be unconventional. and I do not want to be normal. I don't believe in homogeneity. But as I thought more about that, even describing to people whether there's an adversity you adapt in order to achieve, I thought deeper about that. And I thought actually for several years about that. And I started writing on this because this was a question that continued to come up time and time again with my audience. And I spoke also to schools, and I realized that children ask the same question as well as adults. And I thought this needs to be taught to people, to audiences, to all of us. We should all understand this. We experience it, but nobody teaches it. Nobody's committed it to paper. So I did, at least for myself anyway. And people I encounter and ask me this question, I figured, I'll have something to hand somebody when they ask me next time, how do you not quit? How do you do this? And that is the success cycle. That was the birth of it. So this book actually took me 3 years to write and get to publication, which was a long time. I thought that I had the thing written, and then I reread it, went to an editor, a couple editors. It just didn't feel right. And as I continued to grow and continued to reflect and have additional growth, I ended up going back and basically scrapping 70% of the thing and rewriting it. The concept was still the same, but the articulation of the concepts needed to be better. And it did become better, more precise, concise. And that's the point of it too. This is not intended to be, an adventure novel, something that's really gonna, draw the reader in. If you want to know how to succeed, if you're interested in that, or if you're going after a huge dream, or if you're in a down spot as well, this book may be interesting to you. If you're not committed to growth, or you feel like you know how to do everything and how to succeed, and you're not interested in other input at this point in time, this book is not going to be interesting. Just turn this off. This is probably a waste of time for you. A person really has to be interested and intrigued about learning more about how success happens, not tangentially, but have a personal investment in that. And if that's the case, this book can be for you, and this information can be for you. So that all being said, let me jump into this presentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the book. And it's a pretty easy read. I think it's probably like about 90 pages. Book's like a 5x7. So you can read the thing in a day. And there's a workbook that I added at the end of it, so that you can actually have a workbook to work through your own dream, and kind of have exercises to do to have it make more sense. So let's get going on this thing. The first thing that I challenge you to do is to shift your paradigm about how you perceive success. And this is really interesting, because in life, I was always taught that success is linear. It's kind of like a 50-yard dash, like on the playground. This was one of my earliest encounters with, what is success? You line up next to a bunch of kids, and there's, you line up at the start line. 50 yards down the field is a finish line, marked by a couple orange cones, and bang, race it, go. Everybody starts running. And when you cross the line, either first or when you cross the line, you've succeeded. Like, this is a defined start point. There's the defined ending point. You got to get from point A to point B. And if you do that and you're, first place, if that's your goal, to come in first, then you've succeeded. Or if it's just to cross the line, then you get across the line, you've succeeded. Well, what happens if you trip and fall, or, you twist your ankle or something like that, and you don't get across the line, or you don't get across first? Well, then you've failed, and, game over. And that's kind of how success was taught to me. Either you get from point A to point B, or you don't. And very linear. Well, that's not the case, actually. Success is cyclical. And that's an important piece here. Success is a process. Success is not a destination. Success is a journey. And look at this graphic, if you will. It's cyclical. There are different stages of success. And once you start pursuing a dream, you are a success. You are engaged in the success cycle. You are engaged in the success process. Success is not a destination. It is not that line when you finish that 50-yard dash, as soon as you line up at the start line, you've engaged in the process. You are in the success cycle. When you take that first step, when you're running towards that line, if you trip and fall, all of that is part of success. It is a journey. It is not a destination. That's really important. Success really should be viewed as a verb. It's action. It is not a thing, person, place, or thing, or a place. It's not a noun. Success is a verb. Success is a journey. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So I need you to rethink or have an open mind to how you're going to perceive success and experience success going forward. And hopefully at the end of this, you're going to come along with me and have that aha moment. Success is not a destination. It is a journey. So how does this whole thing take place? Well, there has to be some starting point with success. And if we're going to go after anything or, have epic dreams, that is the starting point, really, having a dream about something. And that's an interesting thing, because when we think about dreams or having a dream for something, like, I speak to a lot of schools, and a lot of times I speak with younger kids. I say, what's a dream you have for your life? And I'll hear, I want to be an NBA star. I want to be a rapper. Or this one kid said, I want to terraform Mars, which I didn't know what it was, but basically means make Mars inhabitable for human life. And there was a dream. There's all these different dreams that we have, and we have them as adults too, but as kids, they're, less filtered, if you will, and unabashed, which is beautiful. I think we should all keep those for all of our lives. But what are the constituent parts of a dream? That's something I really had to think deeply about. And I think there's two parts to a dream, which is interesting because, research says that we have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Like thoughts. These are intangible. They're things that come through our mind. They come, they go. And they could be about anything. They could be, wow, that car is loud, or it would be interesting to maybe fly a kite today, or I wonder what it would be like if I could fly a plane, or maybe I'll run a marathon, or gosh, I have to get this email. But like all these different thoughts, and we're bombarded with all these communications as well. So 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I mean, there's an infinite number of thoughts that almost 8 billion people in the world have on a daily basis. You do the math, it's extraordinary. But what makes a thought, what transforms a thought into a dream? I mean, you got 60, 80,000 thoughts, but they're not all dreams. I mean, maybe there's one a day. I doubt that's the case. Maybe there's one a year that you have as a dream. People talk about bucket lists, things like that. I'm talking about, like, what is something when you have a dream for yourself? Two constituent parts to that. A dream is made up of a thought that you choose to believe in. Now, that's really important, because with these tens of thousands of thoughts that we have each day, we don't choose to believe in all of them. Some we just barely attend to. If you try to think about all the thoughts that you had yesterday, you won't remember. You'll remember a few, because you weren't invested in them. A dream is a thought that you choose to believe in, you choose to invest in. It's something that you dream for yourself. So think about it. I want to go to medical school. I want to run a marathon, or I want to learn to drive, or I want to learn to skateboard. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do this. That's what we're talking about here. It's a thought that you have, one of these random thoughts, and you choose to believe in it. That's the genesis for the success cycle. So, what is a dream you have for yourself? Maybe it's to backpack Europe. Maybe it's to get promoted at your job. Maybe it's to run a marathon. There's a gazillion different types of dreams, and there's no judgment on dreams. It could be a dream for yourself, could be a dream that you want to do for others, but it's a thought that you choose to believe in, and that's an important piece here. And dreams don't stick around forever too, because think about this. A lot of times we will have a thought that we choose to believe in today, but in a week priorities change, and all of a sudden that belief or that fervency, that, fire, that passion has faded. Well, dreams, the belief does not fade. This is something that stays with you forever. If it's a temporary dream, that's something different. That's giving temporary belief to that thought, and it will fade, and it will never be accomplished because you won't believe in it. It takes a lot of work to accomplish a dream, and you have to have belief in that thought. That's what gives power to this entire process. So that's where we begin with the first part of the success cycle. We have a tripartite system: adversity, adapt, achieve. And there's actually a fourth optional part, the resilience loop, which I'll explain a little bit later. But we're at the very first part, which is when you have a dream. Now, notice on the graphic, there's also adversity under dream, because if you have a dream but no adversity, the dream just manifests and becomes real. It transforms from being an intangible thought that you believe in into a tangible reality, something that has happened, is happening, or it's happened. Adversity is what stops a dream from automatically sliding into being accomplished. And there's always adversities with dreams. Always, always, always. Could be monetarily, financial, could be intellectual, could be, that this thing's never been done. There's a whole bunch, gazillion different adversities associated with dreams. And one thing that I want to explain about adversity, which is very important, because that's a big piece of what I've learned in my life with, losing eyesight or having a bunch of, really, really large, far-reaching dreams. The meaning we attach to adversity dictates the magnitude of that adversity. And I have this graphic on the screen here of a man in a wheelchair rock climbing a big face mountain, like pulling himself up on a rope. It's a paraplegic, and he has his chair attached to him. And dude's just climbing up a mountain. I don't like heights. Just being on a mountain with a rope, even with all the gear and safety, freaked me out. This guy doesn't bother him. Also, he's got a chair. That's even more, weight, difficulty. Well, doesn't even affect this dude. I mean, he's going up the mountain. To me, that adversity is overwhelming. To this guy, it's totally manageable. And that's really important in a starting point for how we're going to deal with, and how you need to deal with, adversity that you encounter associated with your dream. There is something that's called the adversity magnitude continuum. Now, each adversity that you encounter can be either overwhelming or manageable. It just depends on where it lands on this continuum for you. Each person has their own separate adversity magnitude continuum. Mine is different than yours, depending on, or they may be the same, depending on the particular situation, and basically depending on our own experiences, perceptions, values. There's a whole variety of different things that go into that, but each one of us are different. Each one of us have a different adversity magnitude continuum. Specifically, any adversity that you confront will be most likely different or individualized to each person on this continuum. So whether something is overwhelming or manageable depends on the person. The other thing is where it exists on this continuum ends up becoming a choice. I mean, there's an initial gut reaction to where the adversity lies on this continuum, but there's a thought process also associated with that, and you can choose where the adversity lies on the continuum. For instance, if I was faced with climbing a large face rock at the very beginning, before I got roped up, I'd be like, this is overwhelming. Well, I could change my thought and that would drive emotions and probably behavior where I wouldn't even get strapped in. But there's also a way to say, okay, this is manageable. I've seen this other fella do this, and a lot of people are doing it. And I changed my thought process from assessing the situation as being overwhelming to manageable. And with assessing the adversity to becoming manageable, then I'm able to end up engaging in the behavior. And that's the behavior model process I'm going to talk to you about right now. So we do have the ability to modify where any given adversity exists on this continuum, and it's a choice. So in psychology, there's something called the behavior model. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do want to give at least a background into the psychological basis for what I'm talking about. In the psychological behavior model, there's a thought, there's belief that thoughts, which we have, drive emotions, and emotions drive behaviors. And in this graphic too, I have positive, plus signs up top, negative signs on the bottom, and I define each one of these. One, the upper sequence I call the positive sequence, the lower one the negative sequence, because of the plus or the minus. So positive thoughts drive positive emotions, which drive positive behaviors. The inverse is true as well. Negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative behaviors. And when I'm thinking positive and negative here, I'm really thinking of when we're assessing our adversity, whether we're thinking it is overwhelming, I would call that negative, or whether it's manageable, and I would call that positive. So if we believe something is manageable, if we think it's manageable, that drives emotions, which are generally speaking positive, and you engage in positive behavior, and you engage in behavior to overcome that manageable adversity. The antithesis of that is if we're on that adversity magnitude continuum, we think something is totally overwhelming. I'm frozen at the bottom. There's no way I can scale this thing. I'm not going to get up on some rock face, hundreds of feet up above the ground, even with safety gear. If I'm thinking like that, that's going to drive negative emotions, fear, which is paralyzing, which will drive negative behavior. I'll be frozen. I won't get up that rock face. So this is the concept of the behavior model. It begins with a thought. Thoughts drive emotions, which drive behaviors. There's a positive sequence, there's a negative sequence. We can re-engineer our behavior, however, and that's what I want to talk to you about here. So let's say that we're going down that negative sequence. I'm having a negative thought, it's driving negative emotion, and I'm not going to do this thing. Well, if you're aware how this works and you have self-awareness of what's going on, like your behavior agitated, like what's going on, what's my, backtrack to what's my thought. Okay, I'm in this behavior model, I'm in the negative sequence. You stop that thing and you say, what I need to do is back up to the beginning of this and change that negative thought of feeling overwhelmed to feeling like this is manageable. And that's where we get that stop sign and we backtrack to change that negative thought into a positive thought, into something positive. And then you will find yourself in the positive sequence where your positive thought, re-engineering that negative thought to a positive thought, will then drive positive emotions to drive positive behaviors. So this is also true with adversity. It mirrors this, right? So if we're confronted with an adversity and we are thinking this thing is overwhelming, like freaked out, I can't do this. Well, stop and re-engineer that negative thought to a positive thought. Instead of thinking this thing is overwhelming, which is going to freeze you, think this is manageable. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to think about that, but you can choose to think that. You can also use different coping strategies, look at other examples, research, talk to people, calm yourself down. There's a whole bunch of different ways, but what you need to get to is to re-engineer that negative thought of thinking it's overwhelmed to thinking this is manageable. And when you do that, when you think, oh, this is manageable, that drives emotions, no worries. There's not consternation and angst. And then you engage in behavior to overcome that adversity. You're engaged in the positive sequence. That's an important step that you need to understand and have as you go about in the success cycle. A lot of people don't even understand that what's happening, but this is taking place and you're still in the very beginning part of the success cycle of just having a dream. just having that thought. You haven't even taken any action yet. This is all a mental exercise, mental emotional exercise. And this is all happening. There's another way to take care of this and re-engineer this adversity. And sometimes, people with high anxiety or people who really think about things a lot or can get stuck in this, cycle, they can get trapped in this, thought process cycle and get stuck trying to re-engineer, and it's just paralyzed and they get trapped in this thing. In that situation, psychology has a different form of a strategy to overcome things. They call it exposure therapy. I call it the face your fear exception. And that is, if a person is having a negative thought, feeling this overwhelmed, having negative emotions, they choose to behave in a positive manner. So I could be stuck at the bottom of that rock face. I could be like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm getting up there. I could have these emotions, fear, paralyzing angst, but I engage in the positive behavior. I clip in and I start pulling myself up the rock face. So I'm in the negative sequence. I feel like this is overwhelming, but despite all of the thoughts and the emotions, I still engage in the positive behavior as if it was manageable, and I start going up it. If you are prone to high anxiety or a lot of overthinking, if you will, you may need to use this. So be aware that this does exist, and it's a way to get through that particular piece. So that's a really important preview of the first part of the success cycle, which is all about having that dream and adversity and making that adversity manageable. 80% of dreams never get out of that first phase. One, because the belief fades, the passion, the belief in that thought fades, and it just goes off. And then people never follow up. The other reason why people don't get out of that initial phase is because they feel like the adversity is overwhelming. They don't know how to manage adversity from being overwhelming to manageable, and how to manage themselves psychologically to be able to get out of there. So if you've gotten out of there to where you're actually ready to move on, congratulations, pat yourself on the back, because you're one of the lucky 20%. 80% will never even get out of there. Phase 2, adapt. What do you need to do in order to transform this intangible dream into a manifested, tangible reality? Well, that's all about the adaptation phase, and sometimes our fourth cycle there, the resilience loop. But in the adaptation phase, there's some really, really important stuff that happens. This is where the work takes place, folks. You're out of the mental exercise, and this is where the rubber meets the road. You plan your work and you work your plan. You may have heard about that before. If you haven't heard about that, that's something that is true in everything. In big, epic dreams, it takes work to get this stuff done. It's not easy. If everything was easy, everybody would be doing it. If big things were easy, everybody would do it. There are no shortcuts for success. And this is all part of the success cycle. You got to do the work. So you're going to plan your work. There's 2 phases of the adaptation phase: the planning phase and then the execution phase. So plan your work is phase 1, work your plan, execution is phase 2. And I associate each one of these phases with eyes, which are, acronyms. So for the plan your work, for creating a plan, how do we go about doing that? I give a simple way to do that, how I've done it in the past. There's many different ways to create plans, but I find this one to be very doable, usable, simple, and I like simple. 3 eyes: imagine, innovate, improvise. So what I do is, for each adversity, identify what my adversities are to my dream. What is impeding my dream from becoming a reality? It could be financial, it could be a whole bunch of different things. So let's say I'm learning to ride a bike. I use that as an example in my book. If I'm learning to ride a bike, I want to learn to ride a bike. That's my dream. But I could have a whole bunch of different adversities. I could have vertigo issues. I could not have the finance or resources to be able to have a bike. My the bicycle that I have, my family bike, could have a flat tire, could need repairs. Um, I may not think that I have the time to invest to try to go through the iterations to try to learn balance and practice in order to become competent at riding a bicycle. So there's all these different adversities. What I do is I list each one of these out. Here's adversities, and some are external, some are internal. I identify those as well, because the internal adversities, generally speaking, I can make a choice, and I have a lot more quote control over those by choosing how to assess that, whether it's manageable or not manageable. And generally speaking, internal adversities are a bit easier to be able to overcome. External adversities, sometimes those take a little bit of more finagling, a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, collaboration, that type of thing, as you can imagine. But for each adversity, I list those out, and then in column 2, I put, imagine, innovate, improvise, and I have different strategies for each adversity. So let's say I do not, adversity number 1 is I do not have a bicycle. Imagine a solution to that. Well, I could go around and start asking, people for a bicycle, or I could go get a job and earn money and then go buy a bicycle, or, there's a whole bunch of different ways to imagine a way to get your hands on a bicycle. Go talk to a nonprofit, go research a nonprofit that gives out bicycles to needy people. Just list all of the different solutions you can imagine. Then innovate. And innovation is taking something, modifying it to suit your needs. Well, in the garage, I may not have a bicycle, but I may have bicycle parts. Maybe I'm going to build some and ask, neighbors for, an extra couple pedals if I know they're bicyclists or cyclists or what have you. You may need to innovate. And then finally, improvise. Improvise is more on the spur of the moment type of thing. So, perhaps, I'm just, imagining and innovating and trying to, brainstorm these different strategies. And I happen to be, walking to, wherever, the store, and I see a bicycle outside with a sign that says, take me, I'm free. Okay, you improvise. That was never part of the plan. You didn't assume that you're going to happen upon a free bicycle, but you'll improvise, in the moment as you need it. So anyway, these are 3 strategies and words that I always use, because they're always great ways to confront adversity, with imagination, with innovation, with improvisation. Be creative. This is the creative process. The planning phase is all about creativity. If you're a creative type and artistic type, brainstorm, get some more people involved in brainstorming with you and for you in order to create that initial plan. What's going to happen is you fill out this adversity log, if you will. You have all these different ways of imagining or innovating or improvising. And for each adversity, you may choose to only use, one of the eyes. You may choose to, for adversity number 1, you may just choose to use your innovation strategy. Or if it's going to be very difficult or brand new, you may want to use all 3 different strategies, throw them all at it. You think you're going to need to use all of them: imagination, innovation, improvisation strategies, in order to overcome that adversity, because just imagination may not do the trick, or innovation may not do the trick, or improvisation may not, but it may take all 3, maybe a timing issue. So what's going to happen is you go about this in your adversity log. You're going to go through cost benefit planning. And what I mean about this is, on the left side of the graphic, you see there that there's the perceived effort involved to implement your strategies. Meaning, if you have imagination, innovation, improvisation, they take effort, they take time, they take resources. And what is that effort involved? You're weighing that against, on the other side of the scale, the perceived consequence of failure on this iteration. So if failure is absolutely not an option at this iteration, what you're going to do is you're going to go and implement every single strategy that you have. But that's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work, especially if you have a lot of adversities. And you're talking about a lot of work, a lot of strategy, but you're going to go through this cost benefit planning with each adversity when you decide which strategies to throw at that in order to overcome it. And so when we're through that first part of the adaptation phase, plan your work. Now it's time to work your plan. This is the fourth I, implementation. So the first three I's go with creating your plan, imagination, innovation, improvisation. And then this is the fourth I that goes with executing your plan or implementing your plan. The plan needs to be implemented with operational excellence. This is where I can't tell you, so many different ventures fail, because this is where the real work happens. You got to have work ethic, and you got to be willing to attend to all of those details, do each step of your plan. There cannot be cutting corners, no shortcuts. You know, with humans, we're kind of lazy creatures. We would rather not do all the work than do all the work. This is absolutely critical. So, you may know some of those people who are really great at operations. Chief operation officers, they're the ones who get the stuff done. They've grown up in that function of do the details. They get stuff done. They attend to it. They understand it. They're able to execute those plans with operational excellence, with precision. Now, super, super critical, because when we're all going to end up at a point which I call the crux. And notice that this is right after the adaptation phase and before you pass into either accomplishing your goal or failing. And failing is okay, by the way. It's not a four-letter word, fail. It's a good word. It's part of the success cycle. It's part of succeeding. But as you're executing, if you end up at the crux, and if this is new, if this is hard, maybe your strategies were insufficient to overcome the adversities, or there was an adversity that wasn't even identified, you weren't even aware of, you never even create a plan for it, or you create a plan for everything, but you didn't execute that plan absolutely correctly, or you had an adversity identified, but your strategies, you needed a different strategy. You went through imagination, innovation, improvisation, still didn't overcome it. You need to come up with another strategy to be able to overcome that adversity. For whatever reason, you end up at the crux and your plan is insufficient, or your implementation of that plan is insufficient, and you fail. Now, this is where we enter the optional fourth part of the success cycle, which I call the resilience loop. This is very, very important. And this is, failure. Just call it failing. But failing, this is another time where we need to change our paradigm, because many times in life we think if we fail, we're a failure. And I have friends, colleagues who cannot even bring themselves to say, like, I failed. Like it goes to their person. Well, guess what, guys and girls? We all fail. We all end up in the resilience loop at some point in our life, especially when we're going after epic dreams and really, really, big efforts. Brand new things. If you're doing something that's never been done before, expect to find yourself in the resilience loop. If you're setting out to, go to Mars or launch a rocket or go to the moon or invent the light bulb. Thomas Edison is quoted as saying, I failed 10,000 times in order to succeed once. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, failure is just success in progress. Bruce Lee had a really great quote saying, I think in truly great attempts, failure is, exceptional. Um, and, this is what he's talking about here, in truly, truly big, big dreams, hitting that failure, failing to accomplish that dream on the first go around is, exceptional because you've actually undertaking something so incredible. Um, anyway, I just want to detach any stigma from failure or associated with that. My youngest daughter took up skateboarding a couple of years ago, and I got to tell you, she is really an exceptional skateboarder, in my opinion. But she didn't get that way overnight, and she had come home with bruises, bumps, concussions, like crazy stuff in order to learn tricks that she can now do. She had to fail multiple times, and she fell into this resilience loop multiple times. So, she gets on the skateboard, tries to do this trick, and, falls flat, scrapes herself up, may take days, may take weeks to learn it, but she's going through this resilience loop. She's down there in the failure loop. Well, what happens in the resilience loop is you become stronger and smarter, but the initial reaction is that there is pain and fear. So when we fail to accomplish our goal, when our plan and execution of that plan fails to meet its mark, there is a stop sign there with pain and failure, pain and fear, and it is paralyzing. I'm going to talk to you how to overcome that. The next thing that happens in this resilience loop, or when you fail, is you become stronger and smarter. I mean, you're stronger because you got to pick yourself back up, smarter because you've done one trial and you've realized this doesn't work. And then you realize, okay, well, this is why it didn't work. You didn't know that before you failed, because if you did, you wouldn't have had this strategy. Well, you've learned something, you become more knowledgeable. So anyway, there's a lot of good that comes from this resilience loop. There's also another piece in here, which I'll go more into depth on, called the resilience quotient. And that is at the guts of this. I mean, if there's anybody out there questioning yourself about how can I, do this, or how has this happened, or how has this not happened for me, I believe it's all about the resilience quotient. That's pretty deep into this. So I'm glad you're hanging in there. I'll get there in a second. First, let's talk about these paralyzing factors that we confront: pain and fear. This is when we first fail, we're going to confront the stop sign, pain and fear. They are paralyzing. How do you unparalyze yourself? Well, let's break this down. Pain that you experience is feeling something in the present. P for pain, P for present. That's how you remember those. Fear is about something in the future, something that could happen. F, fear, F, future. That's how you remember those. Pain is present, fear is future. That's what I mean by era. Let's deal with pain first. Pain is about something in the present that you're experiencing. It could be financial, it could be mental, emotional, physical. There's a whole bunch of different types of pain that we could feel when we fail. So we have a plan to learn to ride a bicycle. We make an attempt, we crash miserably. Pain, let's just say it's physical pain. We're all bloodied up and, whatever. That's a big preventer, a big paralyzer from making an additional attempt. So how do we overcome pain? Very simple. You acknowledge it and you accept it. I learned this in my athletic pursuits. When I was running across the US, there was a significant amount of pain. I was running 50 miles a day back to back. And basically for the first 2 weeks, the pain continued to increase. I mean, I thought it was going to increase to infinity. I didn't think it would stop. I didn't know how I would be able to bear it. What would I do? Just like implode or like short circuit? Well, what ended up happening was that it eventually plateaued after 2 weeks. And then, I had to use this strategy of I acknowledge it and I accept it. One of my dear friends, Marcel Ulrich, who had run across the US at 58 miles a day, is the fourth fastest crossing now. He had given me a great piece of advice. We had went to lunch and he was going over my plan with me, giving me some advice. And when we were getting ready to part ways, he pulled me back. He said, "Hey, I got to tell you something else." I was like, "Okay, tell me, Marsh." I was on pins and needles. He said, "When you're out there, Jason, in the very beginning, this was called the break-in period. That's the first 2 weeks. Said, you're going to feel pain like you have never felt before, physical pain, emotional pain. It's just going to increase. But what you have to do is, what he did was he talked to it. He acknowledged it, said, pain, I know you're here. You're not going to stop me. Now I'm going to keep on running. And what Marsh was telling me was exactly the strategy I'm stating here, which is the way to overcome pain is to acknowledge it and accept it. You don't overcome pain by fighting it. You don't think that because pain will win. Pain doesn't stop. Eventually it stops. But if you're giving pain energy, if you just, all of your focus goes on to the pain you're feeling in your foot or your arm or your psyche or your emotions, you're just feeding it. And it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. On the other hand, if you just acknowledge it, pain, I know you're here. I know I hurt. I'm gonna accept it. I don't have a problem with you being here. You can continue to affect me, and I'm gonna carry on doing my business. That's the way to overcome pain. It's a psychological exercise, some physical, but it's all about acknowledging the pain and accepting the pain. Not trying to live pain-free, because that's frankly, that's a tangent, but I believe if we're too comfortable, that's not how we're supposed to be living. There's supposed to be a bit of discomfort. There's supposed to be a little bit of pain, and living with pain that's part of life. You acknowledge it, you accept it, and you carry on. So that's the way to overcome the paralyzing power of pain, and that exists in the present. P, pain, P, present. Now, fear. Let's say with that bicycle crash, you went down, scraped yourself up, and you're fearful. You're like, oh my gosh, next time I might break a bone, or it might be worse, or I might have a concussion, or something. You're fearful of something that has not even happened in the future. A gazillion things could happen, but you're hyper focused on a negative thing that could happen in the future. The way to overcome fear, a thought that's taking you into the future out of the present, is gratitude. And the reason why gratitude is such a good coping strategy with fear is because fear is about something negative. Gratitude is about something positive. Fear is about something in the future. Gratitude is about something in the present. So it's negating or neutralizing the negativity and moving into the future with positive thinking and bringing yourself back to the present. So after you crash, there could be thoughts of fear of, oh my gosh, I could break a bone, this and that. Or there could be thoughts of gratitude, like, whew, I'm okay. I made it. I got a bike and I was able to give a trial, and I have an area right now where I can make another trial. You're having gratitude and you're bringing yourself back to the present instead of living in the future and spiraling with negative thoughts. You're bringing yourself back to the present and grounding yourself with a positive thought. So when you have fears about something, you need to ground yourself with gratitude. Think about this. You're at work, you fail, your team has attempted to do something. It doesn't work out. It fails. Oh no, I could get fired, or my boss is going to be mad, or this is going to impact my promotion. All that stuff is off in the future. It doesn't even matter. You're spiraling negatively in the future. Bring yourself back to the present and ground yourself with gratitude. We learned a lot from this. We're still here as a team. We need to regroup. We can regroup. We have resources, and we're going to accomplish this thing. You're grounding yourself with gratitude, with positive thought patterns in the present. Super critical. And I can't tell you, because a lot of times when people fail, there's pain and fear. What I've just explained to you is the way out of that paralyzation. And it takes a lot of time to have the discipline for this to happen like that. It doesn't happen overnight. You're gonna have to remind yourself, because that pain is gonna come back. You have to continue to use that strategy, acknowledge and accept. And that fear is gonna come back. You're gonna need to continue to exercise gratitude. The more you do this, the more it becomes second nature, and the easier it becomes in all areas. Could be riding your bicycle, it could be work, could be relationship, could be athletics, whatever. But this is the way that you overcome pain and fear. And the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. So you got to practice that. Okay. the resilience quotient. This is this is the guts of the success cycle. And a lot of people, may have lost you getting deep into this place. And well, if you haven't stayed attended, then you've missed probably the most important part of this thing. But the resilience quotient, I haven't seen anything out there. I haven't seen anything published. I haven't seen anything. And when I thought about this and I wrote about this and I started creating this, I was amazed. This was a unique thought for me. And I got to believe other people have had the thought. I don't think I invented it, but here's my discovery. When we fail, we develop resilience. And I think there's a quotient. Like we all have a resilience quotient. Like there's an intelligence quotient. There's an emotional intelligence quotient. There's all these different quotients, right? There's a way to measure your resilience. And I believe it's with strength and knowledge. So those are the two constituent parts of your resilience quotient. Now, remember when I talked about failure initially, when you fail, you become stronger. Why? Because you have to pick yourself back up. It could be the physical act of becoming stronger. Think about riding the bicycle. You fall down. You have to physically use your muscles and pick yourself back up. You've become stronger. If you fall down 1,000 times and you pick yourself and your bicycle back up 1,000 times, you have 1,000 reps of muscle use. Those muscles are going to become stronger. That's the metaphor. And it's the same thing with other, theories that you may test. If you're a scientist, you're testing a bunch of hypotheses and you continue to, not get a positive result or a failing result, if you will. I'm not sure that they really are failures to hypotheses unless you've kind of stacked the deck. But anyway, I don't think that exists in the scientific method, but yeah, I think you get my drift. You have to redo the experiment and redo your attempt. So you're getting stronger. You're exercising, maybe not your physical muscles, maybe you're exercising your emotional muscles, maybe you're exercising, your mental muscles, but you're getting stronger with each new rep and each failure. You're getting stronger. You're also getting smarter. As I mentioned before, when you fail, all of a sudden you've learned, oh my gosh, I didn't know that could happen. Or, this other unanticipated circumstance happened and that created the failure. Like you've analyzed deeper, so you've become smarter. You know why you failed. You didn't know that before the failure. You are becoming smarter. Now, as I mentioned before, the resilience quotient is made up of strength and knowledge. And I kind of measure it. There's a deeper way to measure it. And, for statistical people, we can go a lot deeper and answer some questions, but I just want to introduce the concept here. And the concept is that with each failure that you experience, you're building that resilience quotient. So take a look at this. I have strength as a factor, wisdom as a factor. On the far right column is RQ, that's resilience quotient. For experience one, and let's just take this as the bicycle effort, trying to learn a bicycle. Let's say you crash 4 times. Experience one, you fall down. You've gotten stronger by 1 and smarter by 1 because you've learned about what happened and you picked yourself up. So you have a resilience quotient of 2. You take another trial for the bicycle, you crash again. You get stronger because you picked yourself up a second time and you've learned another reason why you've fallen. First, maybe you're not pedaling fast enough. Second, maybe there was an obstruction, that you had to make a last second aversion of. Well, you learn that you have to do that. So you get a resilience quotient of 2. Notice it increased. And these are cumulative too. Experience number 3. This is the 3rd time. So you're adding to your strength factor by 1, by your wisdom factor by 1, because you picked yourself up a 3rd time, yourself in the bicycle. So your muscles have gotten stronger. You're also wiser. This time, your crash happened because you didn't know how to use the brake. You actually, were pedaling and you avoided obstacles, but you had no idea how to brake, crashed. Resilience quotient of 6. It's increased significantly from your very first experience and from having no experiences. Okay, the 4th trial, you crash again. Well, you had to pick yourself up again, so you've gotten stronger. And you've had the mental fortitude also to pick yourself up after 4 times. So it's not just physical strength, it's also emotional strength as well. Wisdom, This time you crashed because a squirrel ran out in front of you. This unexpected, third thing, this, weird factor went out, and you got to make a decision next time whether you smash that squirrel or whether you avoid again, and you crash. So you may choose to avoid that squirrel, hopefully, to keep all God's creatures on the earth, and you may end up with a crash. But that's resilience quotient of 8. So look at this. What I'm trying to explain to you is that resilience is cumulative, right? And I've used the biking example because I wanted you to see and understand this. However, your resilience quotient and your resilience, how resilience is made up within you, is not just about your particular dream. Resilience is cumulative across all of your experiences in life. So what do I mean by that? I mean that you develop, I believe the people that are best situated to succeed are people who have experienced trauma, who have experienced failure, who have been through the most difficult times, because they are standing in front of you at this particular point. Somehow, some way, they made it through to this point right here. They have resilience. It may not be with the exact result that they want, but they made it through to this point right here. Now, contrast that with a person who's been absolutely privileged, has not been challenged, has had everything go their way, experienced their first failure in life. They could be devastated because they don't understand about failure. When you go through that resilience loop, or when you fail, you build your resilience quotient. You're just more apt to be able to do things. If you've gotten, roughed up along the way, your resilience quotient is extremely high. Now, this is something I used to look for in my hires when I worked in the corporate world. In my interviews, I would talk to a lot of people. A lot of people don't like to talk to their failures, about their failures. Well, that's what I like to talk about. And I don't use the word failure, but I'm like, tell me some of your struggles. Tell me some of your traumas. Those difficult things in life, even if they're unrelated to work. I know that the resilience quotient can be transported from different facets of life, from the professional life to the athletic life to the emotional life. Think about that too when you're choosing a partner. If you have somebody who's been through a lot of tough stuff, they've grown a lot. Their resilience quotient can be exceptional. And nobody walks around with, I have a resilience quotient of 180, or I have a resilience quotient of 2. I mean, it's not even talked about. It's not understood, but there's a huge positive aspect of resilience and experiencing difficult things in life and working through them. So that's something very important to think about as you're going through the success cycle, and as you're attempting to take on these huge, epic things, and you may not accomplish your dream on the first iteration or first go around. You're building resilience. A lot of people, when they experience failure, they're like throwing they experience pain and fear. They let the paralyzation take them, or if they can get through that, they're just like, forget it. I failed. It's like that 50-yard dash. They think of success as linear. They've hit a failure. They've hit a breakdown in that process, and they just throw in the towel. They're like, it's over. I failed. It's not over. Success is a verb. You're in the process. Failure is part of succeeding. Failure is part of succeeding. You're going to end up back at that crux again and again. So when you're getting stronger and smarter, building your resilience, you're jumping back into that adaptation phase, and you're modifying your plan. You're coming up with, you're imagining differently, innovating differently, improvising differently, and your implementation is also going to be different. You're going to be more precise. You're going to choose different ways to overcome those adversities. Maybe you have 10 adversities. Maybe on the first go around, you get 7 of those done, but you still have 3 to go. And those are taking a lot of your effort. The next go around, you get 1 more taken off the, loop, and then you down the resilience loop again. Then the next iteration go around, you get, the second one, you'll have 1 more adversity you have to take out down the resilience loop. And maybe it takes a few times around that resilience loop to that very last adversity, because this is very difficult. It's novel. You've never understood how to do that. Well, you're spinning around that resilience loop again and again and again. And remember, each time you go through that resilience loop, you're hitting pain and fear. And for the person who doesn't understand the success cycle or the process for how success takes place or how dreams are accomplished, they may be paralyzed, and they may just throw in the towel. I mean, the pain may be overwhelming. It's just part of a process. So eventually what's going to happen, you're going to hit the crux again. the end of where the adaptation phase, where the resilience loop, and where the accomplishment or achieve phase all coincide, and you're going to make it through. You're going to overcome all of those adversities, and you will achieve your dream. What happens then is you have manifested something, manifestation. You have built your confidence, and there has to be analysis. There has to be analysis. A lot of times, that's an overlooked step for highly successful people. They analyze how they got from point A to point B, and they will look back and understand all of those iterations and times in the resilience loop, all of those modifications that they made, what was required in order to get here. The confidence that is built, that you build as well, it basically is on the backbone of resilience. And the more times you're in that resilience loop, the more your confidence is going to grow when you finally do accomplish that dream. It's incredible. They're directly related. There's a direct correlation between those two. And manifestation, that's kind of an interesting thing, kind of like a new age thing. Well, it's not really new age, because this is not the kind of manifestation where I'm saying just sit down and think about something, then poof, you think, oh, I'd like a bowl of strawberry ice cream, then poof, strawberry ice cream is like right here. Doesn't happen that way. This happens with significant work. So this is not the, new age manifestation. I don't believe that there are any shortcuts. I believe that very difficult things take a lot of work and extraordinary effort. And that's the way that you manifest, extremely difficult things. Let me give you the 4 pillars of mental strength. So as we look at this and we've gone through this process, how do you keep going through it? How do we keep moving through this process? How do you keep the thing spinning around? I use what I call my 4 pillars of mental strength: hope, patience, consistency, forgiveness. 1 is about the future, 2 about the present, 1 is about the past. And there's different times and different thought patterns that you will have that will be holding you up. And these 4 pillars of mental strength, I implement those depending on what's holding me up, whether it's something that, I feel like is about the future or in the present or about the past. So hope is about believing in something for which there is no evidence, believing when everybody is telling you you're crazy, when you may think it's impossible, just continuing to believe. And that's, you use that when there's these things in the future that are talking to you, or that are attempting to sabotage or undermine your dream. You choose hope. You exercise hope, and that overcomes, those potential negative consequences and keeps you engaged in the process. Next one, patience. Patience is all about the present. When things get difficult, in this process, as in life, there will be storms. Sometimes those storms are day, 3 days, a year, 3 years, decade, 3 decades. But what is true about storms, they eventually pass you by and blue skies come out again. And exercising patience in that storm when the difficult times are upon you. This process, there's going to be different parts of this process that are going to be very difficult for you to go through to accomplish. Maybe the mental aspect in the adversity phase, just managing that, on exercise, doing the work on the adversity magnitude continuum, trying to move from an overwhelming thought to a manageable thought. That may be just, take a ton of practice, a ton of iterations to get yourself to where it ends up being second nature. You may need to be tremendously patient with yourself, and you may be really good at the details or creating plans and executing plans. So, the patience for you may be in phase 1. Otherwise, you may be, kind of like some other people, that a lot of people have difficulty with phase 2 in the adaptation phase of creating a plan. They may have difficulty with creativity, with that brainstorming phase, or with implementing with precision, having that operational excellence. You need to be patient. So when you're encountering something in the present, an issue, when you're in the success cycle, remember to have patience. That operates against negativity that's happening in the present. Consistency. With consistent effort, you will achieve consistent results. Inconsistent effort yields inconsistent results. when you're going through the success cycle, you have to be consistent on a daily basis. You need to be working your plan. You need to work that plan consistently. If you don't, you get down, you lose hope, you get stalled out. You're going to see things start to fall apart. And it's the process. You're stalling out in the process, and you think you're actually going backwards in the process. But what it ends up doing is it ends up degrading your belief in your thought, and it evaporates the dream. That's why all of the failures, all the negative, all that stuff, that's how it operates to become a dream killer. It just goes to your belief in your thought. In any type of failure, any type of adversity, it's trying to destroy your belief in your thought. Consistency, if you're consistent, it's going to keep that belief stronger. You're constantly feeding that belief. It's just getting healthier and healthier. If you're inconsistent with feeding that belief, you're letting that devil of doubt jump in there. It's trying to destroy the belief in your thought, trying to be a dream killer. So consistency and working your plan on a daily basis, staying engaged in the success cycle, going after on a daily basis, critical, absolutely critical. Forgiveness, the final piece, and notice that works in the past for issues or negativities or challenges that are, quote, in the past. So forgiveness is about baggage. It's about your mind and emotions fixating on something that has already occurred. We need to be present. In order to accomplish dreams, epic dreams, we need to stay present. If you can forgive and get rid of whatever that baggage is in the past, you're going to stay more focused in the present. You're going to be able to work your plan your work and work your plan. And that's where you need to be in the success cycle. An important thing about forgiveness starts with the self. So you need to be able to forgive yourself before you can really forgive others. So if you're being drugged down this rat hole of resentment or negativity, you find yourself thinking about past issues. If you can't bring yourself in the present, you find yourself constantly getting stuck in the past. Look deep in yourself, look in the mirror, and forgive yourself and accept yourself as you are, for all you are and all you are not, and accept yourself. Forgive yourself. You're going to release yourself of a lot of baggage. And once you do that and go through that process, you're going to be able to forgive others more quickly, more aptly, and more truly. So using these 4 pillars of mental strength are how I stay engaged in the game. This is critical. I gave you the process before. Anybody could explain or understand the process, but how do you keep going through it? How do you stay engaged in it? How do you not let these setbacks kill your dream, degrade that belief in your thought? With these 4 pillars of mental strength: hope, patience, consistency, and then forgiveness. Then I have what are called the biological imperatives. This begins even before the success cycle starts, before that dream even takes place. This is what we all got to do as human beings, period. To operate at our peak, we have to be good at these biological imperatives and consistent. The acronym is SHE. Sleep, hydrate, eat well, exercise. Sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. Hydrate, drink a gallon of water. 75% of the population on this planet are chronically dehydrated. We walk around dehydrated state. Dehydration can kill you. Operates with memory, operates with physical capability, operates with mood significantly. That's another significant way to be beat down. Don't even realize that you're dehydrated. Eat well. I'm not saying eat tremendous. Just eat in moderation. Your diet is very important. Very important. The better you eat, the better you're going to be. But it doesn't need to be to the team extreme. Eat in moderation. And exercise. I can't tell you, exercising 3 or 4 times a week, not enough. You got to be doing it an hour a day. I mean, it's like living. It's our body. Our body is what performs, and we don't need to be over the top exercising 4 or 5, 6 hours a day. I mean, for some athletes, that's their job. That's what they do. But I'm saying in order to engage in a productive manner in the success cycle, you need to exercise an hour a day, whatever that may be. Walking is exercising. There's a whole bunch of different ways to exercise, but you need to be doing that on a daily basis. So these are really basic things. And if you take your own self-inventory, before you even get involved in going after an epic dream, you better do the check on these 4 things. Sleep, hydrate, eat in moderation, and exercise. Those are the pieces that drive this success cycle. This is the success cycle all pulled together. And like I said, this has been going on forever. I'm not telling you something that you haven't experienced. My guess is you can relate to what we've talked about here with, something as simple as riding a bicycle. That's what the example I gave in the book that I wrote, and I took it through here, but it also goes directly to when I ran across the US. This is the exact process that took place multiple times in multiple different areas. There could be fundraising, there could be the physical act of running across the US and, the preparation, the plan, that type of thing. Happens in relationships. And note something here too. Failure is part of the success cycle. Success is not a journey. This is not a linear process. It is a cycle. Success is a process. Success is a verb. And that's the message that I'm trying to deliver here to my audiences and explain this. It's really an interesting phenomenon, because what I believe is when you're armed with the knowledge of how success takes place, you're more apt to continue to stay in it, to stay engaged in it, to not let those negative pieces degrade and undermine and sabotage your belief in your dream. Because to kill the belief in your dream is how, the negativity and the enemy destroys dreams. It can derail this entire process if it can take out your belief in your thought. If you know this process, if you know what's taking place, if you know the next step in the process, if you know the steps that have taken place, what's taken place, what's going on, I'm a fervent believer that you will build armor around your belief in your dream, and nothing's going to kill your dream. There's only 2 possible outcomes. 1, you accomplish your dream, or 2, you're somewhere in the success cycle and you're going to die trying. And both of those are noble. So in closing, I wrote, the success cycle. It has what I just talked about in detail, in depth. If you think you already know how to succeed and you got all that down, this may not be the time for you to encounter this information. But if you know somebody who's really going after it, kind of confused, needs some understanding, some different thoughts may help them to rethink their dream and how they're going about different things, or rethink failure or a setback, give them a copy of the Success Cycle, $10. Running into the Dark is another book. That's my memoir, and the book and the story about how I ran across the US. And there is so much of the success cycle in there, with going blind, with getting fired, with having relationships fail, with this insane dream to run across the US, all the failures associated with that, and then finally accomplishing that dream. So hopefully it's an entertaining story, and hopefully by hearing this content, you will feel more empowered with engaging in a process about going after a dream and succeeding. So remember, success is not a destination. Success is a journey. Many times in life, success is talked about as if it's a noun, as if it's a destination, a person, place, or thing, or money. It's not. It is not. Success is a verb. It is a process. Share this with as many people as you can. Thank you. This is Jason Romero, personally blind person to run across the US, keynote speaker, and helper of humanity. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate your attention. Have a great day. Onward.
What you believe is what will be. If you believe you have the greatest job in the world, that is exactly what you're going to have. If you believe your relationship with your loved one is the best it will ever be, and you have the person of your dreams, that is exactly what you will have. And the antithesis is true as well. It's a decision. And decisions can be made in an instant.